with MVC struts, right? So we have already seen what are the different layers which are going to be in our MVC struts programming, right? And struts, we are going to learn struts 2, which is web work plus the combination of struts 1 components, right? Now here, so let me show you one more component here, which I was we were talking at the previous class while completing the class. So as I said, this was a controller, model, and view, right? Now now this controller will be an XML, model will be a normal Java classes and all, which will be interacting with this. Now I'll show you how an XML can talk to a class. This will be wondering, right? Now how can a XML can actually create an object of class and actually call different methods of class? This is something which is a very exciting feature in struts actually, right? And then based on the response, how we are going to map to the various JSPs, right? Now this is something which is going to be different here, right? So we'll see how exactly we are going to actually check this out, right? And one more thing, you can see that everything here is in your struts package. Whatever you are writing, we are going to run on some layer. Now, so as we said, you are going to receive the request, right, and send the response, right, to this controller, model, view, and all we were talking about, right? Now, unless you have a server, which is web server. So we were talking about Tomcat, right? So unless some web server is listening to the request, right, we can't get request to the actual controller, right? Which means you should have a web server. First component. Second component is Tomcat, which is a web server can understand deployment descriptor, which is called as a web.xml. Web.xml is something which is very important for describing what exactly should be happening. Now you can see here, as soon as we are getting any request, right, how will it be routed to a struts XML or XML, which is controller, is a question, right? Because request will not be routed directly to the controller. No, it will not happen. You have to actually make this routing through the Tomcat. Whenever we get request, we have to do something to route request and bypass to controller. This is something which is very important, and this bypassing will be done through something called web.xml. So this is where we are going to use a deployment descriptor called web.xml, and we are going to call this controller here, right? So that is what we are going to check this out today, right? So now very important components are, we are going to first configure the Tomcat, right? And secondly, we are going to let's say we are going to create strut.xml, right? And after the strut.xml creation, we are going to actually write something on web.xml. Now how we are going to route request from Tomcat through web.xml to controller here is through filters. Now these filters are nothing but the same filter which we have learned in our servlets. Same filter we are going to see, we are going to write that in order to move to the corresponding controller here, which is our interceptor basically. And this interceptor will be talking to XML called strut.xml, and from strut.xml everything else will actually go ahead with the as normal as we used to see, right? Now let's go ahead and see how we can actually configure. First, let us see how to set up our project with different things. Now I've created a brand new Eclipse here. Now I've kept some binaries ready over here. Now first thing is, what we are going to do here is, initially before starting, now this workspace is a plain brand new workspace. Now initially what we are going to see here is, today we'll see mainly the setup part, how to set up struts, from where to download and all, right? And then I'll give you a set of jar files which you have to use in order to set up a struts project, right? And then we'll see how we can actually write a simple struts program, strut application, and and then we'll see what is the difference exactly we have as compared to Servlets, JSPs, and the Struts program. Right now, firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Tomcat. Now, configuration of Tomcat is same as what we have seen in our advanced Java, which is while learning servlets and JSPs, right? We have seen that. So let me go to servers tab here, click on new server wizard. Now here I'm going to select Apache. In this we have Tomcat 7.0. Let me give the same name. Let's retain this name. Click on next here. Now here we have to give the path where we have a Tomcat. Now here I have downloaded the latest one, Tomcat, and I hope you know from where to download. Let me show that again. So so let me just say Tomcat 7 download, or you can just say Tomcat 7 download and go to the download site. Now here, from here you can actually download the version whatever you want. Right? Now here you can actually select to the core and the 64 or 32-bit of a Windows version. And if you are using 64-bit machine of any other machine like Mac or any other, you can directly go ahead with this 64 either direct service installer. Right? Now you can download from here. And the second step is that is what I have done. I have downloaded the version here, which is 42 version of Tomcat, the latest one. And now I'm going to set up this path into the Tomcat folder. Now this will automatically read the bin folder here, which you have already seen. Right? From this bin folder, it will actually take up the files required and from different folders actually, not only from bin. It will go for configurations, bins, and various folders, and then it will actually configure. Now click on finish. Now when you do finish, right now you can see a server folder will be created. Now your workspace here is ready with one instance of Tomcat server here, right, which you can use for configuring your web applications. Now, so let me create. Now your server is ready now, right? If you want to start, you can right click and start. Right, if you want to stop, you can stop from here itself, right, and you can do various things here. Now let's create the first Struts application. Now let me create a new project here. Now as we are going to create a web application, right, so we are going to choose a dynamic web project. Click on next, and again these things will be same again, right? So let's say I'm going to give you as my Struts some project name. And you can retain, you can see here, as soon as we gave this Tomcat 7, right, it automatically took the default server from our Eclipse workspace. Now this server actually we got this from the current workspace instance, right? So you can actually have multiple workspaces, right? And in multiple workspaces you can actually have multiple server instances in each of the workspace, and this will actually target from the current instance of server, right? And then you can select the web module and all, and you can keep that as it is. Now let me keep the classes as it is, and then let me just click on generate web.assembly. Now you can see that sometimes it is, it will be unchecked. Make sure that you are actually creating this, right? Now if you don't check this, that's fine. If by chance if you forget to, if you just miss this, right, you can create your web.xml anytime you want. Now click on finish. Now this will create a Strut project. Now this is something which is a normal project. This is not a Strut project. In order to make this Strut project, then we have to actually configure the project in using Struts. Now second step is that we have to configure the project with Struts. Now how to do that? Now as I said in our previous class, right, you can just take the binaries of Struts. So let's go ahead and download the binaries here. Let me just say Struts download here. Sorry. Let's the Struts download here. You can directly go to Apache Struts site. Now here you can see this is a new changed state of changed a new website of Apache. If you would have already seen this site, right? The site was old and it was actually upgraded with a new look actually. Right? That's why you can see everything being arranged in a very good manner. Right? Now you can see that this Struts, we have a full release of, as we are going to learn 2.3, right? So you can download the full distribution, right? So once you download this full distribution, right, you will have so many folders, right? You can just download among the among all the binaries which you have, right? So I have selected few binaries which you can actually use for using them. So let me go to desktop and you have Struts. Now here I have consolidated all the binaries, all the jar files which are actually needed to create a Struts program. So let me copy them. So I'll share this folder with you in Dropbox. You can just use them. Now here what I'm doing is I'm trying to create this. I'm trying to copy this file. Now once you copy this and put it in your lib folder, right? We have already seen that in a project, if you copy any jar in a lib folder, right, automatically that jar will be referenced to the complete project. So let me paste it. Now you can see all the jars got copied to the current instance of my Struts. Now which means I am now I can actually create a Strut programming which is completely based on controller which is Strut.xml in this project. Until unless you have these files copied, right, you can't actually move on with the Strut programming, right? This is one thing. Now if you want in another way, you can also do that. You can actually go to project properties here. You have something called build path. Now in build path, whatever libraries you add, right, that will be added over here. Now you can see here all the jar files actually got a reference from here, right? And whatever we copied here, right, so will be referenced here, and you can see the same path of the workspace because we actually copied everything into lib folder which is in the current workspace, right? So that is how it is. And if you want to copy the same thing in some other way, right, you can also go ahead. So you can actually add a library. So this is called as a library, the symbol you can see, right? And if you want to go ahead with a library, you can go ahead. You can just click on add library here, you can see. And now these libraries are predefined libraries which we have, like Apache, JRE, ER libraries and all. If you want to create your own library, you can go ahead with user library here. Click on next. You have user library, click on that. Now here you can actually create a new library. Let's say I'm going to create some Struts library. Okay. Now select this and just say add jars. Now you can add jars which are in your project. Now let me add these jars. Okay. Now you can see all the jars will be added to your library here, right? And now click on, I'm going to select this and click on OK. Now if you select this and finish that, you can see this I can actually use, all the jars will be referenced in the Struts. Now one very important use of this way of adding libraries is, if you create many projects in your application, right? So let's say I'm just clicking on OK here. Let's say I'm creating one more project like dynamic web project. Let me call it as my Struts 2 something. Click on next, web.xml and finish. Now here you can see this is a brand new web, dynamic web application. You can see lib will be completely blank. Now again, instead of copying the jars again, right, what you can do, you can select the project, right click on that, you can go to properties here. Now if you go to libraries, right, you can see there are no libraries here, right? So what you can do, instead of copying the jars again, we have already created a user library. You can just say add library, user library here, next. Now you can see this Struts which you have created. Select on that and finish. Now you can see automatically it will actually get all the jar files you have in your folder. Click on OK. Now which means even your MyStruts2 is also compatible with the Struts program to write. Now this is how you can also do the packaging of libraries. So for now, let me close this second project, which is MyStruts. Now let's go ahead here and see different things again. Now first step, we are done with the first step, that we have added the resources, which is libraries here, both in lib, or either you can do either of them. Okay, you don't have to do both, right? Either you can add from project properties, or you can actually add directly to the lib folder. Either of them you can do. This is the next step after configuring Tomcat, which you have. Now, second thing is, the third thing is that we have to create the controller. Now it actually comes to the controller part. Now controller is something, as I said, interceptor part you don't have to worry, because interceptor is something which we are going to define the direction in our web.xml. So I'll show you how we can actually define them. Don't worry. Now here we have to create a start.xml. Now the nomenclature which I'm actually talking about, which is struts.xml, should be standard. Strut.xml is a standard name of the controller. You can create multiple controllers. I'll show you how to create them. You can interconnect between multiple controllers. You can interconnect between multiple controllers with different packages and all these things. We'll check out in our upcoming folders. Now here you can see in Java resources we have something called source folder. Now this folder are called as source folder. You can create your own source folder for Strut.xml. So let me create a new source folder, let me say source folder here. Let me call it as something called resource. Just say resource, and project name, let me give MyStruts. Click on OK. Now here I have created a resource, right? Parallel to my source folder, right? And now I'm going to create an XML. Now XML is nothing but a plain XML which we have in here, which is a normal XML file. Let me click on next. Now here the name of the XML should be struts.xml. This should be standard. Struts.xml, because Struts APIs will understand this Struts, which is, let me just say, right? Now you can see that this is your XML which we have created, which is a Struts.xml. Now here, site of Strut.xml documentation. Now this should be the header of your Struts.xml, because this actually will mention that you are going to have a reference of 2.0. Now this 2.0 will give reference to all 2.x versions of Struts. Don't worry about that. Now this is how we created Strut.xml. Now here, each and every referencing. Now here you can see the next step is that how can I actually create referencing to some model or a view. Right? We have created an XML. Now we have to create something like how can we connect to the different things here. Right now. So once the XML is done, right? So now first let's go ahead with the web.xml and just connect them to this. Now because now we have a Tomcat ready, right? Which is Tomcat ready, and now we have a controller ready. Now let's connect the controller to the web controller to this using a web.xml. Now in web.xml, as I said, you just have to define a filter asset. Now let's go ahead and let me just show you the filter here. Now here in web.xml, so the filter is same as how we have seen in our servlets. So you can create a filter here, right? And this filter will have its own filter name, right? And the filter class. Let's say this filter name is some struts2, right? And this class is something which you have to mention the complete struts. Now the APIs, whatever you have added here, right? Now the core is something which is very important, this struts2 core. Now we are going to give a complete namespace with class here, which is file dispatcher class name, which will automatically map. Now I hope you remember what is a filter. A filter is something which will actually give you like a firewall layer for any servlet. Now how can we attach that? We can attach using the filter mapping. If you remember this, you have filter mapping here. Now in filter mapping you can use a filter name. Now name should be same, and then you have to give the pattern. Now here I am going to give URL pattern because this is a strut programming. Now which means when I give slash and star, which means whatever request comes to this project, what I'm doing, whatever request, which means the slash star means all the requests. Every request I'm going to read out to struts2, and struts2 is actually pointing to one of the class. Now why I've actually taken up from there is like you should not, this should be same and this should be case sensitive, right? You have to follow the same. Now this is something org.apache.struts2.dispatcher, which is a namespace, and in this namespace we are actually following a class called filter dispatcher. Now this filter dispatcher class is something which is pointing to our controller part, which will actually redirect the request to the controller C. Now this is how we normally generate a relation between when a request comes to web.xml, it will be directly directed to the web.xml. Right? Now let's move ahead. So this connection part we have seen. Now let us see, we have a controller here. Now let's create a model first and then we'll see how to map it to the XML here. So let me just go ahead and create a model class here. So here let me just create a model class here. So let me create a new package first. So let me just say new package. Let me just say com.c. Let me call it struts. Now here let's create a class. There is nothing big in these classes. It's very simple Java class which we are going to map directly from our XML, which is controller. That is something which is going to be important. Now here let me just say model class as some action class. We normally call, if you remember, this model here in struts, we normally call it as a action classes. So let me just give it as action 1 something, or let me call it as some CLS action, or let me just say action class something. Let's finish. Now this is going to be an action class. Now here, so there is one thing which is here. Now you can actually write parameters, so many methods and all, right? And how can I call this class from the strut.xml, right? So whenever any request comes to my strut.xml, so that strut.xml has to be routed to this XML, which is, we are done with that because we have written the filter in web.xml here, and that request we have to validate, right? We have to do some operation. So where can we do some operation? So that is the reason why. Now when I say operation, which means we have got the order, and that order should be prepared. Now where do we prepare? We prepare in kitchen, which is the model here. The chef which this guy hired is a model. Now this is something which is going to work. Now how can I connect these two? Right? Now that part we have to write in struts. Now here the mother root node here is struts, right? Now how you are getting this, you can see here, as soon as I'm typing, right, you can actually get the complete node here. Your Eclipse will help you. How it is helping? Because we have all the libraries which supports this, right? Now first thing what we have to create here is the package. A package is the one which you have to create, which will be mapped to each and every action here. Now package here will have some attributes which is default. You will understand what exactly is a package. So initially let's take the default package and let's say extends. So these are standard extends, which is struts hyphen default. Now this is the default, and then let's give namespace is slash. Now this is something which is a default package we have. So inside the package now we are going to write an action. Now you can see Now this is something where we are going to call this class. Now here in Struts.xml, this is a very important step. When you say action, which means whenever from any website you want to call anything, this is a name which we have to give. Let's say I'm going to give login like this. Now this is my name of the action. Now this login, whenever I get a request to this login action, right, I want to route it to some class. Now this class here you can see, which you have learned in our Java beans, if you remember, right? Same is action class here. The Java bean class in our JSPs is same as the action class which we have here. But initially we are going to see how we are going to declare this. Now we have to declare with complete package. Now this is a package which you have, which is class dot, and then you have to give the class name, which is action class. Now by default, when you give this, right, the request will be redirected to this class. Now what is the method it will be redirected to? Now by default it will actually redirect to something called public. You have something called string. Each and everything should return string, whatever method you are going to use in a action class. And then execute is a standard method which will actually give us, which you can see here, I'm just calling a class, which means my Struts.xml will implicitly create an object of this class and will call this method by default. Now how to call a method which is not default, we'll come to that in our future classes. Don't worry about that. Now this is something, let's say it says string execute, right, and then let me return something which is return, let's say success, right? A very simple method here, success. Now here let's say you have success as return type, which means whenever a request comes here, it went to Struts.xml. Struts.xml actually redirected the request to model class, which is action. Now action class is doing some operation. Based on some operation, it will actually give success or failure, right? Now based on success, you have to go to some page, let's say, right? That is what we have to do. Now we have seen till the XML that calling the action class. Based on the response we are going to get in from action method, we are going to route to some of the JSPs. Now let me create a JSP called JSP. Let's say this is something which is success.jsp, let's say, right? Now I'll just say this is a success page, simple. Let's call one page first. So this is a success page. Now here, how can I map? Now initially I have mapped my class. Now this will return a string here, which is success. How can I handle this string in my XML is a question, right? So in Struts.xml action, right, you have internal things called results. This is a place where you have to handle the return type. Now this name will give you what is the return you are getting. Let's say I'm going to copy this success and this. Now this is the result. Now this is a class which is action class. It will create an object, call the default method called execute. Now that is returning success. We are going to handle that success in the result part. Now here, if we are getting success, then I want to go to the page. Now what is the page we have? We have something called success.jsp. Simple as that. Now this is how we normally create the Struts.xml we have. Now package is nothing but then this package we normally create, which is based on mainly the namespace. We'll see this part when we actually learn the namespaces in Struts. Now, so with this, you can see that whenever request comes to my Struts, it will redirect to action class. It will call this method. It will get a return type here, success. Now, when it gets to success, it will actually go to the success.jsp, which is this. Right now, let's say who is actually going to call this login. Let me create a JSP here. Let me call it as login.jsp. Now let's say here I'm going to create a form. If you remember, we have already seen this form tag. Now this action in our previous classes in JSPs, what we used to do, we normally used to do something like either a JSP or submit. Now this time we are going to use, let me just drag this to first. This time we are going to use an action name called login. Now let me copy this login, and this is going to be my action. As simple as that, right? And now you can actually create input. Now this time let me just create direct submit, right? And then let's say value is also submit, right? I don't have any other pages here, right? Now this login.jsp will call a login action. Now by default, if you just give login, right, which means it will be implicitly mapped to your StudXML login. It will call this class, get the result, and we go to the page. That is what is going to happen. Now you can see here, any request has to go from StudXML, right? Any request has to be processed on class, and any response should be mapped to a view. That is how it actually maintains the MVC pattern. Now let me run this. Let us run this and see how it works. Now let me run this login.jsp. Now first time, as we are actually running this project for first time, my web application, right? So when you run this, it will ask which server you want to use. We have already seen this, right? Let me select the default Tomcat server and click on always use this server and click on finish. When I click on finish, you will see that it will actually open the login page. Yeah, right? And when you click on submit, you can see it will go to this is a success page. Now you can see here how the extension is. It is not saying .jsp or anything, right? Now this login is the one which we have mentioned here. Now if you just say login 123, let's say, right? You can give any name. Now you have to mention this login 123 here, let's say, which is this, right? Oops, sorry. Now let me just call this again. So let me just go to my struts login.jsp. Let's click on submit. Now you can see it went to 123. Anyways, we have to rebuild the project. Anyways, this is something very important. If you change anything in your StudXML, right? StudXML, which is XML here, it is always important to restart your server or rebuild your project and restart your server. Now, why are we using XML? There is a very genuine reason why actually we normally use it. Not only here, across all the frameworks, main components will be XMLs. Now what is the reason? Let me tell you. Now here let me run this first and then I'll show you why we are using it, right? Let me copy this. Let me just browse on the browser. Now when I click on this submit, you can see this is a success page, which you can see that the page you are getting is login 123. Fine. Now the main reason why we are using this StudXML is, now let's say if you have if you want to change anything in configuration, right? Now this will actually act as a controller. Now this won't be this simple. We are going to make it we are going to see all the complex situations in our StudXML. Don't worry about that, right? Now here basically what happens is, if you have any class file or anything, right? If you are defining all these things in a class, and if you change anything, what you have to do? You have to generate a .class file for this. You have to create a new build. Right? You have to follow the complete cycle in order to make it live. But if it is an XML, right, you can just change this XML and restart the server. That's it. Right? Everything will be synced up directly. You don't have to redeploy your site. That is why we normally go for XMLs, which we also call as a raw files. Raw files, JSPs, HTMLs, image files, all these things are called as a raw file, which means it doesn't need any build, like compilation is not needed. That is the reason why we normally prefer XMLs. Fine. Now here let's say let us improve this to one more request. Now let's say here I'm going to say it as if I divide by something 2, right? something. What, or I'm just going to give some condition here so that we can actually take it up. Let's say boolean lblm status something is false, and now I'm going to return if boolean is true, then this, else return. Let's say I'm going to take one more situation here. Let's say I'm taking fail something, fail. Now here I have two different things. Now let's say now the case is failed case, right? It will actually return failed, which means you also have to handle this case. Now let's get back here. How can I handle multiple return types? Now when I have one return type, right, I know that I can create a result. Now if I have multiple values that it can return, then obviously you have to go for multiple results. Now where you have name has failed, now here you have to mention a JSP. Let me create a JSP here. Let me just say let's say some failure.jsp. Fine. Now this will create a failure. Now here let me just say login failed something, right? Now you have to mention this page here, which is /.jsp, failure.jsp. Fine. Now this will take care of one more return type called failed, and this will return your result called failure, and it will actually go to the failure.jsp. Now let us run this and see how it works. Now here in my action class, I am intentionally making this as a false, which means it should go to failed case. So let me run this. So let me right click on this and restart the server. Let's go here, go back. Now this is my login.jsp. When I click on this, right now you can see login failed. Right now let's say I'm going to change this to true, right, and rebuild the project, restart the server. Now let me go back again, refresh this page, which is login. Now click on submit. Now you can see this is success page. Now this is how this is how we normally start a Struts web project, right? This is how we configure Struts. This is how we actually start up. Now you can see that we are creating multiple JSPs which are acting as a view, and we are creating a model class which will act as a logic writing. And now you can see controller is something which will take care of everything. It is calling model class based on the return type. It is giving out a JSP, because you can see that whenever it gives out a data here, you can see the activity action name will be same, because this action is something which is actually returning the page here, right? Now that is how we normally configure Struts. We normally work on different things, and each and every step whatever we have gone through is very important in Struts. Now this is something which is a foundation of a complete Struts web applications. Fine. Now, so do you have any questions in this? Banu? Vikas? After syncing up, right, after you configuring everything like StudXML, Struts in your project, which is web application, both in lib and from project here, whether you are going to get the same output or not, right? And these are something, just practice out. I just want you to practice, so that once we actually move on to the complex topics of Struts, right, I want you to actually just get into how we can actually define this. Anyways, I'm going to write more and more actions, more and more packages, more and more results, more and more interfaces which you can use for that, right? But there you should understand what exactly happened. So just go ahead and actually try till this, okay? So once you are comfortable with this, then we can actually go for when we can actually accelerate the multiple complex topics of Struts, right? But if you can understand this, right, it will be much.
I can draw the buttons and the text box, things like this.
You mean in your JSP? You mean?
Yeah, JSP. Yeah.
Now in JSPs, yes, you have something called, you can just I'll show you something. You can just right click on JSP and just say open with something called web page editor.
Okay.
So this is something which is a complete HTML, right? Now this is a web
Okay.
page editor. Now you can see whatever you do, this will actually take up, right? And you want a toolbar, right? You can just go to window, and you can actually go ahead with something called uh, right, Faruqi? Now this palette will give you all the
Okay.
controls, and as we have added these struts, that's why we are getting this. That's it. If you actually see this normal web application, right, you will not have these tags. Now this is something
Okay.
got populated because of your struts code, right? Because the Eclipse will actually read all the controls and will actually give you this. We'll see this part. Okay, don't worry. Maybe we are not going to see everything, but yes, we are going to see few things like form, text area, right? Which will actually give you how to actually compare your, you know, I mean, normal form, HTML form with strut form. We'll come to that.
And another thing, do we have canvas in Java? Like when we design a web page program, is there anything like canvas? If you can do some graphic stuff?
Canvas, yes, like you mean iframe type, right?
Yeah, I found that.
You have, see, whatever you have in HTML, right? You can actually use everything. You have a canvas, you have a HTML, you have a direct div where you can actually create a canvas and write your own graphics.
Okay.
You can do everything,
It's
but
support
only
it's support HTML5 too. Five,
HTML5. Yeah, this
five.
will, normally you can see, normally it actually supports, if you are using Juno or Kepler, right? Yes, it will actually support HTML5.
HTML5.
Yeah, it will support.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no issues. So try this out, guys.